I was standing in my kitchen when I saw her through the window, spinning in my backyard like she was auditioning for a fairy tale. The ivory silk caught the morning sunlight, the hand-sewn pearls glinting with each turn. My breath caught in my throat because I recognized every stitch, every delicate detail of the lace sleeves. It was Isabella's wedding dress. My dead daughter's wedding dress that my sister Vanessa was wearing like it was some vintage find from a thrift store. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. Isabella had died 3 months ago in a car accident just 2 weeks before her wedding to David. 24 years old, my only child, gone in an instant, when a drunk driver ran a red light. The dress had been hanging in my closet since the funeral, still in its protective bag, still smelling faintly of the bridal shop where we'd spent hours finding the perfect one. She'd been so excited about it, calling me every day leading up to the wedding to talk about how magical she felt wearing it during her final fitting. I watched Vanessa twirl again, her phone held high as she recorded herself, and something cold settled in my chest. This wasn't some innocent mistake or moment of grief-induced confusion. This was calculated. Vanessa had always been jealous of Isabella, of the attention my daughter received, of her success, her happiness, her upcoming marriage to a wonderful man. Even at the funeral, Vanessa had made comments about how Isabella always got everything, even in death. I walked outside, my hands trembling with rage. Vanessa saw me coming and had the audacity to smile, striking another pose. "Look how gorgeous this is, Diane. I found it hanging in your closet when I was looking for something to wear to Jessica's engagement party. Isabella won't be needing it anymore, and it fits me perfectly. Waste not, want not, right?" The casualness of her words hit me like a physical blow. Won't be needing it anymore. As if my daughter was simply away on vacation instead of buried in Riverside Cemetery with the engagement ring. David had slipped onto her finger one last time before they closed the casket. I stared at my younger sister, at her perfectly styled hair and makeup, at the way she was posing for her social media photos in my dead child's most precious possession. "Take it off," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "Take it off right now." Vanessa laughed, that dismissive sound she'd been making since we were children whenever I tried to stand up to her. "Oh, please, Diane. Don't be so dramatic. It's just a dress. Isabella would want someone to get use out of it instead of it just rotting in your closet forever. You know she'd want me to have it." That was when I snapped. Isabella wouldn't want anything because Isabella was dead. And she was dead because some selfish person thought their wants mattered more than someone else's life, just like Vanessa thought her Instagram photos mattered more than my grief, more than the sacred memory of my daughter's final dream. "She would absolutely not want you to have it," I said, stepping closer. "She couldn't stand you, Vanessa. She told me at Christmas that you were poison, that you destroyed everything you touched out of spite and jealousy. She said she felt sorry for me because I never learned to stand up to you." Vanessa's smile faltered for just a moment, before returning full force. "Isabella was always a little dramatic, just like her mother. Look, I'm keeping the dress. I already posted about it online, and I'm wearing it to Jessica's party tonight. Everyone's going to love it. Besides, what are you going to do about it? Fight me?" She turned away dismissively, but I caught her arm. The fabric was soft under my fingers, the exact texture I remembered from when Isabella had modeled it for me, tears of joy in her eyes as she talked about walking down the aisle to David. The memory made my grief surge fresh and sharp, but it also crystallized something else. A cold, clear determination I hadn't felt since the day the police officer came to my door to tell me about the accident. "Actually," I said, pulling out my phone, "I'm going to call the police." Vanessa spun around, her face incredulous. "The police? Over a dress? You've finally lost your mind, Diane." But I was already dialing, my fingers steady now. Because this wasn't just about a dress. This was about 37 years of watching my sister take whatever she wanted, whenever she wanted it, and having everyone in our family tell me to just let it go, to keep the peace, to be the bigger person. This was about every birthday party she'd ruined, every relationship she'd sabotaged, every moment of my life she'd poisoned with her selfishness. And now she'd taken the last piece of my daughter I had left. The operator answered, and I spoke clearly into the phone while maintaining eye contact with Vanessa. I need to report a theft. My sister has stolen my deceased daughter's wedding dress from my home and is refusing to return it. Do not put title. Do not edit any part of the last artifact. Just open a new artifact starting with this part. Do not put title. Proceed with part 3. Make sure that each part is at least 5,000 words. Remove bracket. Do not put bullet or numbering, make it paragraph always. Do not mention the previous parts. Do not mention subscribing to channel. Proceed directly to story. Also, do not repeat the story and phrases from the previous stories. The words hit me like a sledgehammer to the chest. I felt my knees buckle slightly, and Officer Martinez reached out to steady me. But even through the shock and pain of Vanessa's vicious lie, I felt something else crystallizing inside me. This wasn't just theft anymore. This was character assassination of my dead child, and it was the last straw in a lifetime of Vanessa's cruelty. That's a lie, I said quietly, my voice deadly calm. And you know it's a lie. Vanessa's smile was triumphant and cruel. Prove it. She's not here to defend herself, is she? Maybe if you'd been a better mother and actually paid attention to what your precious daughter was doing, instead of worshiping the ground she walked on, you would have seen the signs. Officer Martinez stepped between us, her hand moving instinctively toward her radio. Ma'am, you need to calm down and return the dress immediately. Making false statements about the deceased is not helping your case here. But Vanessa was on a roll now, high on the power of causing maximum pain. False statements? Ask David if you don't believe me. Ask him why Isabella was staying at hotels 3 nights a week. Ask him why she suddenly wanted to postpone the wedding date. Ask him why she was crying every time she talked about the future. The sick thing was, Vanessa was twisting just enough truth to make her lies sound believable. Isabella had been stressed about the wedding, overwhelmed by the planning and her demanding job at the marketing firm. She had been staying late at work more often, and yes, she'd mentioned wanting to push the wedding back by a few months to reduce the pressure. But that wasn't cheating. That was just a young woman trying to balance too many responsibilities. I'm done listening to this, I told Officer Martinez. I want to press full charges for theft, property damage, and I want to explore what other charges might apply for making defamatory statements about a deceased person. That's when my phone rang. It was David, Isabella's fiancé, and I realized with horror that someone must have already posted about this online. Vanessa had been recording herself in the dress earlier, and in our small town, news traveled fast. Mrs. Chen, David's voice was shaky. Someone just sent me a video of your sister wearing Bella's dress. Please tell me this isn't real. I looked at Vanessa, who was watching me with anticipation, clearly hoping David's call would somehow validate her lies. Instead, I put the phone on speaker. David, I'm so sorry you had to see that. She stole the dress from my closet, and now she's making terrible accusations about Isabella to try to justify what she did. What accusations? David's voice went cold. Before I could stop her, Vanessa leaned toward the phone and said loudly, I told her the truth about Isabella's affair, about how she was planning to leave you. The silence on the other end of the phone stretched for what felt like an eternity. Then David's voice came through, not broken or confused, but absolutely furious. Lady, I don't know who you are, but you're sick. Bella was at those hotels because she was planning a surprise honeymoon for us. She was meeting with travel agents and looking at venues because she wanted everything to be perfect. She was postponing the wedding because she wanted her college roommate to be able to fly in from Japan. Every single thing you just said is not only a lie, but it's the kind of lie that proves you didn't know Bella at all. Vanessa's face went white. She'd gambled everything on a lie that could be easily disproven, and now she was facing not just theft charges, but the fury of a grieving fiancé who'd just heard his dead bride accused of infidelity. Furthermore, David continued, his voice gaining strength, I'm recording this conversation, And I'm going to make sure everyone in town knows exactly what kind of person steals from grieving mothers and lies about dead women. Mrs. Chen, please press every charge you can. This is beyond forgiveness. Officer Martinez had been taking notes throughout this exchange, and now she looked at Vanessa with obvious disgust. Ma'am, I'm placing you under arrest for theft and malicious destruction of property. You have the right to remain silent, and I strongly suggest you use it before you make this worse for yourself. As the handcuffs clicked around Vanessa's wrists, she finally seemed to understand the magnitude of what she'd done. Diane, please, I didn't mean it, I was just angry. You know how I get when I'm cornered. This is all just a misunderstanding that got out of hand. But I was already walking toward the house, leaving her to face the consequences she'd spent a lifetime avoiding. I had calls to make, evidence to gather, and a case to build. Because this wasn't just about a dress anymore. This was about 37 years of documentation I'd been quietly keeping, waiting for the day when Vanessa finally went too far. The court date was set for 6 weeks later. Judge Patricia Hoffman was known for her no-nonsense approach to family disputes and her particular intolerance for people who exploited grief for personal gain. When I walked into that courtroom with David beside me, boxes of evidence in hand, I felt Isabella's presence stronger than I had since the day she died. Vanessa's lawyer tried to paint this as a family squabble blown out of proportion, but when Judge Hoffman heard the recording of Vanessa's lies about Isabella, when she saw the photographs of the damaged dress, when David testified about the pain of hearing his fiancée slandered while she couldn't defend herself, the judge's expression grew colder with each passing moment. Ms. Rodriguez, Judge Hoffman said, addressing Vanessa directly, in 30 years on this bench, I have rarely encountered such callous disregard for human decency. You didn't just steal property. You desecrated the memory of a young woman who died tragically, and you did it to hurt her grieving mother. That level of cruelty speaks to a character so fundamentally flawed that I question whether rehabilitation is even possible. The judge continued, her voice growing more severe with each word. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. You have shown this court that you believe your momentary desires supersede the deepest grief a mother can experience. You have demonstrated that you think social media attention is worth more than family bonds, worth more than truth itself, worth more than basic human compassion. Vanessa's lawyer tried to interrupt with objections about the severity of the language, but Judge Hoffman silenced him with a look that could have frozen fire. Counselor, your client made her choices. She chose to steal. She chose to destroy. She chose to lie about a dead woman who cannot defend herself. Now she will face the consequences of those choices. I watched my sister's face crumble as the reality of her situation finally penetrated her delusion that family connections would save her from accountability. For the first time in our lives, there was no parent to call, no family member to guilt into taking her side, no way to manipulate the narrative in her favor. Furthermore, Judge Hoffman continued, the evidence presented by Mrs. Chen shows a pattern of escalating behavior that suggests this incident was not an aberration, but rather the culmination of decades of psychological manipulation and theft within a family dynamic that enabled such behavior. She was referring to the documentation I'd brought to court. 37 years of incident reports, photographs, recorded conversations, and witness statements that painted a clear picture of Vanessa's behavior. The time she'd sold my grandmother's jewelry and claimed it was lost. The time she'd emptied my college savings account and insisted it was a loan she'd pay back. The time she'd destroyed my wedding photos because she thought I was getting too much attention on my anniversary. David had testified about the immediate aftermath of Vanessa's lies, how they'd spread through social media before we could stop them, how Isabella's memory had been temporarily tainted by vicious rumors that took weeks to disprove. He'd brought character witnesses, former colleagues and friends of Isabella's who testified to her integrity, her loyalty, her excitement about marrying David. The prosecution had also called Dr. Sarah Mitchell, a grief counselor who explained to the court the particular cruelty of attacking a bereaved parent through their deceased child's memory. She testified that this type of psychological assault often caused lasting trauma that went far beyond the original loss, creating what she called complicated grief that could take years to process. "Mrs. Rodriguez," Judge Hoffman said, "you didn't just commit theft, you committed a form of psychological terrorism against a grieving mother. You used her greatest vulnerability, her love for her dead daughter, as a weapon to inflict maximum pain when she dared to hold you accountable for your actions." My parents had attended every day of the trial, sitting behind Vanessa, whispering their support, and shooting me looks of betrayal and disappointment. They'd tried to convince me to drop the charges multiple times, using all the old arguments about family loyalty and forgiveness that had enabled Vanessa's behavior our entire lives. But Isabella's death had clarified something fundamental for me. I finally understood that protecting Vanessa from consequences hadn't helped her become a better person. It had only made her worse, more entitled, more cruel, until she felt comfortable stealing from the dead and lying about them for sport. During the sentencing phase, my parents took the stand as character witnesses for Vanessa, describing her struggles with employment, her depression, her difficulty maintaining relationships. They painted a picture of a troubled woman who deserved compassion rather than punishment. But when Judge Hoffman asked if they had anything to say about the impact on me, about the theft of their granddaughter's dress, about the lies told about their dead granddaughter, they fell silent. Even in that moment, they couldn't acknowledge that I had been wronged, that Isabella had been wronged, that their protection of Vanessa had come at our expense. "Your Honor," I said when given the opportunity to make a victim impact statement, "my sister didn't just steal a dress. She stole my last tangible connection to my daughter's dreams. She took the symbol of Isabella's hopes for the future and turned it into a costume for her social media performance." I looked directly at Vanessa as I spoke, wanting her to see the truth in my eyes. But worse than the theft was the character assassination. When she realized she might face consequences for her actions, she tried to destroy my daughter's reputation from beyond the grave. She tried to taint the memory of a woman who lived with integrity, who loved deeply, who was taken from us far too soon. My voice strengthened as I continued. My daughter Isabella was planning surprise honeymoons and worrying about including distant friends in her wedding. She was postponing her special day not because she was unfaithful, but because she wanted everyone she loved to be there. She was staying at hotels not for affairs, but to create magical experiences for the man she adored. That's who she was. That's who Vanessa tried to erase with her lies. Judge Hoffman nodded solemnly as I spoke, taking notes throughout my statement. When I finished, she addressed the courtroom with the authority of someone who had seen too much human cruelty to be surprised, but still possessed enough compassion to be moved by genuine pain. "Ms. Rodriguez, I hereby sentence you to 18 months in county jail, followed by 3 years of supervised probation. You will pay full restitution for the damaged dress, including restoration costs. You will also pay for Mrs. Chen's counseling expenses related to this incident, and you will perform 500 hours of community service, specifically working with grief support organizations so that you might develop some understanding of the pain you have caused." The gavel fell with a finality that echoed through the courtroom. Vanessa's sob was the only sound as the bailiff approached to escort her away. My parents rushed forward, still trying to comfort her, still making her their priority, even as she was led away in handcuffs. As I walked out of that courthouse with David beside me, I felt something I hadn't experienced since Isabella's death. Not happiness, exactly, but a sense of completion, of justice served, of boundaries finally established. The cycle of enabling that had poisoned our family for generations had been broken, and it had been broken in a place where truth mattered more than family politics. 6 months after the trial, I received a letter from Vanessa in county jail. I almost threw it away without reading it, but something made me pause. The handwriting looked different, smaller, and more careful than her usual bold scrawl. Inside, instead of the angry justifications or guilt trips I expected, I found something that surprised me completely. "Diane," it began, "I know you probably don't want to hear from me, and I understand why. I've been in mandatory counseling here, and the therapist made me write down every cruel thing I've done to you over the years. The list is 17 pages long. I never realized how much I hurt you, because I was always focused on how everything affected me. I sat down at my kitchen table, the same one where Isabella used to do her homework while chattering about her day, and continued reading. The grief counselor here, Mrs. Patterson, lost her son in Afghanistan. She told me about how people would say thoughtless things about his death, how they would minimize her pain or make it about themselves. She said watching me in group therapy was like looking at the worst possible version of herself, someone who deliberately inflicted that kind of pain on others. The letter went on for 3 pages, detailing specific memories of her cruelty that I thought she'd forgotten or dismissed. The time she'd told my high school boyfriend that I was only dating him because I felt sorry for him. The time she'd accidentally destroyed my college acceptance letter because she was jealous that I was getting attention. The time she'd convinced our cousin that I'd said terrible things about her at Christmas, causing a rift that lasted years. I always told myself that you were stronger than me, that you could handle it, that you didn't really get hurt by the things I did, she wrote. But that was just another lie I told myself to justify being horrible. The truth is, I was angry at the world for not giving me everything I wanted, and I took it out on the person who loved me enough to keep trying with me. What struck me most was the section about Isabella. I was jealous of your relationship with your daughter because I knew I would never have that with anyone. Not because I couldn't have children, but because I couldn't love anyone more than I loved my own drama and chaos. Isabella saw right through me, and I hated her for it because she reminded me of everything I could have been if I'd made different choices. The letter concluded with something I never expected from Vanessa, a genuine apology without excuses or qualifications. I can't undo what I did to Isabella's memory or to you. I can't give you back the dress the way it was, and I can't take back the lies I told. But I want you to know that I finally understand the magnitude of what I destroyed, and I'm ashamed in a way I've never been before. I don't expect forgiveness, and I'm not asking for it. I just wanted you to know that your daughter was everything good that I never was, and anyone who knew her was lucky. I folded the letter carefully and placed it in the box where I kept Isabella's photos and mementos. Not because I was ready to forgive Vanessa, but because it was evidence that the truth had finally penetrated her delusions. The consequences had accomplished what decades of enabling never could. The dress itself had been restored by a specialist in vintage wedding gowns. The tear was invisible now, the pearls reattached, the silk cleaned and pressed until it looked exactly as it had on the day Isabella tried it on for the last time. I'd had it professionally preserved and displayed in a custom case in my living room, where it caught the afternoon light the same way it had when Vanessa was spinning in my backyard. David visited often, usually on Sundays after church. We'd sit together and share stories about Isabella, keeping her memory alive in the way that mattered most. He'd started a scholarship fund at the local community college for students studying event planning, Isabella's chosen field. The first recipient was a young woman named Maria, who reminded him of Isabella in her enthusiasm and attention to detail. My parents never apologized for their role in enabling Vanessa's behavior, but they stopped defending her actions. The trial had forced them to confront uncomfortable truths about their parenting choices, about the way they'd consistently prioritized Vanessa's immediate emotions over everyone else's long-term well-being. Our relationship was strained but slowly healing, built now on a foundation of honesty rather than the careful avoidance that had characterized our family dynamics for decades. The community response had been overwhelmingly supportive. The story of what Vanessa had done spread quickly through our small town, but instead of the gossip and drama I'd feared, people rallied around David and me. The local newspaper ran a beautiful tribute to Isabella, focusing on her volunteer work with literacy programs and her plans to use her event planning skills for charity fundraisers. The lies Vanessa had told were drowned out by the truth of who Isabella really was. I also discovered that I wasn't the only person Vanessa had victimized over the years. During the trial, 3 other family members came forward with their own stories of theft, manipulation, and psychological abuse. My cousin Jennifer revealed that Vanessa had stolen her identity to open credit cards in college. My Aunt Ruth admitted that Vanessa had been embezzling money from our grandmother's care fund for years. The pattern was clear and devastating, showing that her cruelty toward me wasn't personal, it was simply her way of moving through the world. The community service requirement turned out to be more meaningful than any of us had anticipated. Vanessa was assigned to work with a grief support group for parents who had lost children. At first, I was horrified by this assignment, worried that she would cause more harm to vulnerable people. But the program coordinator, Dr. Ellen Hayes, assured me that Vanessa would be doing menial tasks like filing paperwork and preparing materials, not interacting directly with grieving parents. 3 months into her community service, Dr. Hayes called me with an unexpected update. "I wanted you to know that your sister has been asking questions about the families we serve. Not nosy questions, but genuine ones about how grief works, how people heal, what helps and what hurts. Yesterday, she asked if she could write apology letters to some of the people she's hurt over the years, with professional guidance on how to do it without causing more harm." This wasn't the Vanessa I'd known my entire life, the one who doubled down on cruelty when confronted with consequences. Something fundamental had shifted in her, whether through the shock of imprisonment, the mandatory therapy, or simply the passage of time. I wasn't ready to trust it, wasn't ready to believe the change was permanent, but I was willing to acknowledge that it existed. On the first anniversary of Isabella's death, I held a memorial service at the church where she would have been married. David read a poem he'd written about their love story. My parents shared memories of Isabella as a child, her curiosity and kindness and determination. Friends and colleagues spoke about her impact on their lives, her generosity, her infectious laughter. I spoke last, wearing the pearl necklace Isabella had planned to wear on her wedding day. "My daughter lived with integrity," I said, looking out at the packed church. "She believed that how we treat each other matters, that kindness is a choice we make every day, that standing up for what's right is worth the cost." She would have been proud to know that her memory inspired accountability, that her death led to justice, that her love continues to create positive change in the world. As I spoke those words, I realized that Isabella's legacy wasn't defined by the dress, or the wedding that never happened, or the dreams that were cut short. Her legacy was in the choice I'd made to fight for truth, to demand accountability, to break cycles of abuse that had poisoned our family for generations. She'd taught me, even in death, that love sometimes looks like consequences, that protecting someone's memory might require destroying their reputation, if that reputation was built on lies. The dress still hangs in my living room, preserved behind glass, catching the light on sunny afternoons. But it's no longer a symbol of loss or stolen dreams. It's become a reminder of the moment I chose my daughter's truth over my family's comfort, the moment I decided that justice mattered more than keeping peace, the moment I learned that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to enable cruelty. Vanessa writes occasionally now letters that focus on her progress in therapy and her work with the Grief Support Center, rather than requests for forgiveness or family reconciliation. I read them and file them away, evidence of a transformation I hope is real but don't yet trust. Healing, I've learned, happens in its own time and on its own terms. Isabella would have been 25 last month. David and I celebrated her birthday by volunteering at the Literacy Center, where she used to read to children. The kids there know her story now, how a young woman who loved words and stories and helping others lives on through the books they read and the dreams they pursue. That's the legacy that matters, the one no theft or lie can ever touch. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.